The year is 1875. The world is buzzing with stories of the American West. People are dreaming of fortunes. They hear about massive gold strikes in British Columbia, part of the Great Cassiar Gold Rush. This was an era of incredible hope and immense risk. Families packed up everything they owned, leaving their old lives behind for a chance at a new beginning. They traveled by land and by sea, heading toward the promise of riches. The journey itself was a huge adventure, filled with danger at every turn. But the lure of gold was a powerful force, pulling people from all over the world toward the rugged, unforgiving frontier. One of the key players in this mass movement of people and dreams was the SS Pacific. She wasn't the newest or the grandest ship, but she was a workhorse. A sidewheel steamship, she had been serving the West Coast for years, ferrying passengers and cargo between California and the Pacific Northwest. For many, stepping onto the deck of the Pacific was the final step before reaching their destiny. The ship represented a vital link, a floating bridge connecting civilization to the wild edges of the map where fortunes were being made and lost every single day. She was more than just wood and iron, she was a vessel of ambition. On November 4, 1875, the SS Pacific was getting ready for another routine trip. She was docked in Victoria, British Columbia, preparing to head south to San Francisco. The docks were a chaotic scene of noise and activity. People were shouting goodbyes to loved ones, and crew members were loading the last of the cargo. The passenger list was a snapshot of the era. There were seasoned gold miners heading home, their heavy pouches filled with the fruits of their labor. There were wealthy businessmen, families with small children, and even a troupe of performers. Everyone had a story, and everyone had a reason to be on that ship. This particular voyage was special. It was the last run of the season before the harsh winter weather would make the journey too treacherous. Because of this, the ship was overloaded. Official records said there were about 275 souls on board, but the real number was likely much higher, as many people probably paid for passage in cash without being formally listed. The ship was also carrying a diverse and valuable cargo. Besides the personal belongings of the passengers, she held mail, general supplies, and a large shipment of oats. But the most valuable thing in her hold was the gold. A secret, heavily insured shipment of at least $79,000 in gold bullion was locked away, a treasure that would fuel legends for over a century. As the SS Pacific steamed out of the harbor and into the open waters of the Strait of Juan de Fuca, the weather began to turn. The sky grew dark, and a cold, biting wind whipped across the waves. The ship, old and weighed down with too many people and too much cargo, struggled against the rising storm. The mood on board likely shifted from excitement to concern. Passengers who had been enjoying the view from the deck were forced inside by the rain and rough seas. Down below, the crew fought to keep the ship on course, their faces lit by the glow of the engine room fires. This was not unusual for the North Pacific, but on this night, it felt different. Around 10 o'clock in the evening, disaster struck with a terrifying jolt. Out of the darkness and the driving rain, another vessel, the sailing ship Orpheus, appeared without warning. The two ships were on a collision course. In the chaos and poor visibility, there was no time to react. The Orpheus, under full sail, slammed its bow deep into the wooden hull of the SS Pacific. The sound of splintering timber and twisted metal echoed across the water, followed by the screams of the passengers. The impact was catastrophic, tearing a massive hole in the side of the steamship. Panic erupted instantly. The lights on the SS Pacific flickered and went out, plunging the decks into total darkness. Water rushed into the gash in the hull, and the ship began to list heavily to one side. People scrambled from their cabins, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The crew, overwhelmed by the suddenness of the disaster, tried to restore order and launch the lifeboats, but it was a hopeless situation. The ship was sinking fast and the storm was raging around them, making any rescue attempt nearly impossible. The lifeboats were in poor condition, and the chaos made deploying them a desperate, futile effort. Within minutes, the end came. The SS Pacific gave a final groaning shudder and slipped beneath the waves. The icy water of the Pacific Ocean closed over the decks, pulling the ship and almost everyone on it down into the abyss. Of the hundreds of people on board, only 2 men managed to survive. They clung to pieces of floating wreckage for hours in the freezing water, witnesses to the horrifying final moments of the ship. The Orpheus, though damaged, managed to stay afloat and eventually made it to shore, its crew unaware of the true scale of the tragedy they had just caused. the Pacific was gone. The loss of the SS Pacific was a devastating blow to the communities along the West Coast. In an instant, entire families were wiped out. News traveled slowly back then, and for weeks, loved ones waited anxiously at the docks in San Francisco for a ship that would never arrive. When the grim reality set in, the newspapers were filled with lists of the dead and heartbreaking stories of those who were lost. There was Henry T.F. Cooper, a prominent Victoria politician. There was a well-known horse trainer, the owner of a famous racehorse named General Harney, who also went down with the ship. The human toll was immense and deeply personal. Among the passengers were men who represented the very dream of the gold rush. These were tough, experienced miners who had spent months or even years in the remote Cassiar district, enduring incredible hardship to dig their fortunes from the ground. They were finally on their way home, their life's work tucked away in leather pouches and money belts. Their personal hauls of gold dust and nuggets, estimated to be worth a fortune, went down with them. This wasn't just bank-insured bullion. This was the personal wealth of dozens of individuals, the culmination of their sweat, luck, and perseverance, all lost to the sea. The official treasure on board was the stuff of legend. The confirmed insured shipment of gold was valued at $79,223 back in 1875. In today's money, that's worth millions of dollars. But rumors and whispers have always suggested the true amount was far greater. Uninsured gold, cash, and personal valuables carried by the wealthy passengers could have doubled or even tripled that figure. For over a century, the story of the Pacific's lost treasure became a siren song for adventurers and fortune hunters. It was a classic tale of sunken riches, a tantalizing mystery lying somewhere in the cold, dark waters off the coast of Washington. The aftermath was a period of mourning and financial ruin for many. Insurance companies faced massive payouts. Families who had lost their primary breadwinner were left destitute. The disaster served as a brutal reminder of the dangers of sea travel in that era, and led to calls for better maritime safety regulations, such as requiring ships to have enough lifeboats for everyone on board. The story of the SS Pacific became a cautionary tale, a ghost story whispered by sailors, and a painful memory for the generations of families affected by the tragedy. The ship, its people, and its treasure were gone, seemingly forever. For 147 years, the SS Pacific remained a ghost. Numerous search expeditions tried and failed to find the wreck. The ocean is a big place, and the historical records of the ship's last known position were vague and contradictory. The currents and the rugged underwater terrain of the search area made the task seem impossible. The ship became one of the great lost wrecks of the Pacific Northwest, its exact location a deep-sea secret. As time went on, the memory of the tragedy faded, but the legend of its lost gold only grew stronger, fueling the determination of a new generation of explorers. In 2022, that long search finally came to an end. A team from the Northwest Shipwreck Alliance, led by a man named Jeff Hummel, announced they had found the wreck. This was not a lucky discovery, it was the result of years of painstaking research and cutting-edge technology. They had meticulously studied historical accounts, weather patterns, and survivor testimonies to narrow down the search area. Using advanced side-scan sonar, they methodically mapped the seafloor. They found something that matched the dimensions of the Pacific, a ghostly shape resting deep on the ocean floor off the coast of Washington. Confirming the identity of the wreck was the next critical step. The team deployed a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, to get a closer look. The images sent back from the deep were breathtaking. The ROV's cameras revealed the unmistakable form of a sidewheel steamship. They could see the ship's twin paddle wheels, partially buried in sediment but still intact. They even located what they believed to be the lump of coal that was stored on the deck. After more than a century of silence, the SS Pacific had been found, resting in its final watery grave. The discovery of the SS Pacific is more than just finding an old shipwreck or a potential treasure. It's about recovering a lost chapter of history. Today, in 2025, the wreck is being treated as an archaeological site and a memorial. The team plans to carefully study the ship and its artifacts to learn more about life in 1875 and the people who were on that final, fateful voyage. Their stories, which were almost lost to time, can now be told. The discovery brings closure to a 147-year-old mystery and ensures that the 273 souls who perished on that stormy night will not be forgotten. The SS Pacific is a powerful reminder that behind every legend of lost gold, there is a very real and very human story.